The French call him Dieu, all right? The Germans call him Gott. The Russians and the Ukrainians call him Bog. It's not helpful, is it, when your name's God? Bog. I can't think of a better, more focusing, more mind-blowing, infinite subject matter for our Sunday series, if I'm honest with you. You know, getting together as church, hopefully in the light, isn't like showing up at a lecture or there you go, or a library. That was very subtle of me, wasn't it? It's not about showing up at a lecture or a library or just to stack up more knowledge, more statistics like we've heard about the universe or about God. What we do here is community. It's togetherness. It's family. It's about wanting to know God better together. I don't know how many of those stats are true that we've just heard. I don't know whether Discovery is still working and up there and doing what I don't know how when that video was. I have no idea, folks, but here's the thing I'm starting to realize is that God holds all that together. And we're here to experience not only some learning, but we're here to experience his presence together, as well as individually through the week. Folks, you and I are going to do some theology this morning. Is that all right? Theology. Maureen Littman of the BT advert all those years ago would have been so impressed with us. It's an ology, you know. It's an extra special subject if it's got an ology on the end. My old lecturer, Julian Ward, would be so impressed with me. I think I was one of the, can I say this, the thickest people in his class at Bible College. And a lot of the stuff that he went and talked about on systematic theology just went straight over a lot of our heads. Not so today. So don't turn off, don't switch off. Today, we're going to do some theology. All theology is the study of God. We do it all the time then, surely as Christians. You do it every Sunday. We're going to be looking at his greatness, his goodness, his grace, his guidance, his government, his glory, his every other G I can name over the next few weeks. It's doable, folks. Theology is doable. If you're a Christian already today, you're already doing theology. You've been doing theology all your life with Jesus. Paul in Ephesians 1 says, that I might know him. The more that I contemplate God, the more I know him. The more I see his heart for the world, his love for my life. The more I know God, the more I know and understand me. It's like I hold a mirror up to me. When I get to know who God is, I start to understand myself more. If people think there is a God, what do they say he's like? How do they describe him in conversation to you and with you? How do they relate to him? Do they relate to him? Is he an impersonal life force, as some believe him to be? Is he cosmic dust? It sounds like something out of Red Dwarf, doesn't it? Is he universal energy woven into the fabric of the universe? I don't understand what that means. Is he a remote mystery outside of material reality? I'm already starting to switch off. Are you? Elton John. There you go. So I've got a few of you back. Elton John. He in a song, he asked the question about the twists and turns of life. Is it written in the stars? Are we paying for some crime? Is this all we're good for? Just this, what you see? Or is this just a stretch of mortal time? Is this an experiment that God's conducting in which we've got no say, in which we're giving paradise but only for the day? Folks, many people tend to think that God is past his sell-by date. We don't need him anymore. We've got technology, we've got knowledge, we've got all these thinkers. Why do we need a God anyway? In an attempt to suss out life, people consult the stars, don't they? Why do that when you can consult the one who made the stars? I've got friends who will say, I'm going to do this on Saturday, touch wood. And they start looking for wood or some wood. And I'm thinking, man alive, what are you doing? And some of these are Christians. I'm thinking, why touch wood? Why put your hope in that bit of dead wood when you can put your hope and your trust in the one who made the wood? Folks, we reduce God to a piece of wood. God is simply someone, some people think, or something to blame for man's mistakes. And women's, obviously. God is reduced to some heartless scientist. using us, using you and me as some sick experiment, a chess player who gives up a pawn for the sake of a more important character on the board. Folks, king or slave, rich or poor, the adage goes, God loves neither more. There's a journalist, he used to read the 9 o'clock and the 10 o'clock news a number of years ago, and he reported on the Ethiopian famine in 1984. His name is Michael Burke, and he said in the Daily Express, when you've seen 2 million people starving through no fault of your own, you cannot sign up to the premise of an all-seeing, all-sustaining God anymore. Ooh. I don't like to see children in poverty. I don't like to see people torn apart and families torn apart by war. But I don't think I could say that. I pray, like God has so many others, that he'd reveal to our BBC Air Hunters presenter the truth about him and his heart for people. Sir Ludwig Kennedy, he wrote a book called It's All in the Mind. Folks, my experience of God tells me it's not all in the mind. When you see people immediately healed, is that all in the mind? When you see lives change and transform, addictions broken, hope restored, is it all in the mind? Really? And this is the man who was an author and a broadcaster who said, goodbye God, we can get along just fine without you. Folks, you don't have to go very far to see that we can't. You've only got to read your papers, you've only got to put the news on, and you've only got to walk down your street to see the devastating effect of our attempt to get along just fine without God. Famous 19th century German thinker Friedrich Nietzsche dramatically announced, God is dead and we have killed him. Well done, Friedrich. Really? Go through any dictionary or philosophy or religion and you'll find loads and loads of non-Christian ideas about God. There are religions where you make your own up. It's like creating something out of Lego, isn't it, really? You know? Many people think God's like a tyrant or a heartless dictator. They have this idea that if you do something wrong, he's waiting for you with a stick and he's going to dish out the punishment and get you. Folks, you'd be amazed how many Christians think that as well. I'm having a bad week. I must have done something wrong. It's because I said that. And what? It's kind of a spiritual excuse to qualify the consequences of our own actions, isn't it? I visited a new Christian. They were really ill. For 5 days out of 7, they felt really, really poorly. Life was just a blur. And some lovely but daft Christian, do you know the one I mean? Oh no, you've met another one, I'm sure. But some daft Christian told her that God was punishing her. Oh my Lord, testing her. God's just testing you. Really? But here's what she said. This young Christian said this, and how spot on is she? God didn't do this to me. God didn't do this to me, Helen. I did. I did it. What I'm suffering is a consequence of 20 years of me. And whether I die or not, he's helping me through today. He wants to make me better. God is not the selfish one. We're the selfish ones. Naturally, we want people to get better, but sometimes God knows better. God's not the power crazy one. He's not the greedy one who mismanages the nations and the global funds. He's not the one who destroys the environment or our kids in education. We do that very well on our own. Look at what we've made. Who knows that, folks, since you met Jesus, since you met God, you're convinced he is as alive and active as ever because he is changing your life. You don't only just know about him, you're getting to know him. And you're seeing his handiwork, his fingerprints all over your life and those you do life with. So what do I mean when I use this word God? Who is he? What's he really like? And I say he because even Jesus refers to him as he. And he suggests that we do the same. Well, in this series, we're taking a look at how God describes God, okay? Which is the best way, isn't it? The best person to describe me is probably me. You know, I know me, perhaps more than most people do. But you see, here's the thing. Here's what he says about himself. In Jeremiah 23:23, God says, am I only a God nearby and not a God far away? Can anyone hide in secret places so that I cannot see them? Do I not fill heaven and earth? We just saw a little bit of heaven and earth. That's big, isn't it? King Solomon's grasped the fact that there was no limits to God. He's infinite. Can God be contained by the earth? No, he can't. Not even the highest heavens, he says, can contain him. Space, size, distance, nothing can contain or measure him. A ruler, throw it away. That's pointless, even thinking about it. It blows my limited little pea-sized brain in comparison when I even start to contemplate God. The more I understand about him, the more I realize there's so much more I don't know, haven't even started to think about or get to know. The better I get to know him, the more I realize how much more there is for me to get to know. I've lost you now, haven't I? You see, have you ever seen the fridge magnet that says, God can't be everywhere, so he created grandmas? Well, if you're a grandma, God bless you. Wonderful, I'm really chuffed for you. But it's a load of old hooey what that says on your fridge. It really is. God can't be everywhere at once, so he made grandma. Nice thought, but not true. Let me tell you this. He is omnipresent. He's everywhere all the time. He's everywhere. All at once. He's omnipresent. He knows everything, past, present, and future. He's omniscient. He knows it all. I've known a few know-it-alls, but they didn't know it all, I tell you. But God really is the ultimate know-it-all. I don't know how he does it. He just does. That doesn't mean that his toes stretch over Alaska and his nose hovers over West Bromwich town centre. It means that the fullness of God, this is good theology, folks, stick with me, the fullness of God fills all things. Space, atoms, all of that lot, air, fills this space. And somehow I believe that, because the scientists have told me, because I breathe in and I breathe out, and apparently that's doing something and keeping me alive. But God says he occupies all things. Just like the air we breathe, he's occupying all of that space. The creator of everything transcends all our earthbound notions of space and location. He already knows what the Hadron Collider is trying to discover in Switzerland or wherever that is, going round in a circle, if they can afford to put it on with the electric prices. He knows I know, could you imagine that, Bill? He knows the precise distances of the galaxies. I struggle to navigate the potholes in our street. I'd love to learn how to make a toad in the hole, but I will never understand a black hole, I tell you. I really won't. We're used to this term, aren't we? Eternal, everlasting. But I don't think we really understand the scope of that. Let me tell you, God is eternal. He's not limited to time. You and I work on time. I don't go anywhere without my calendar. I don't go anywhere without my phone, because my life is in that calendar. My time, my schedule is there. But our God, our world is obsessed with time. Our existence is determined and defined by the clock and the calendar, but not so with God. He's got a different clock. He's got a different calendar. It has no beginning. It has no end. Time does not limit God, yet he chooses to step into your day. God chooses to work within our time frame. Why? Because he wants to relate to us. Because he wants to reveal more of himself to us. The whole Bible is an account of him doing exactly that. He's intimately involved in the human drama in your day and mine. So often I hear people say, and at times in certain situations, I thought it myself, God can't. He just couldn't do that. And often it's with regard to me. I'm happy for him to answer your prayers because I think your prayers might get heard more. Often, chances are, when it's about me, I start thinking, no, he can't do that for me. He wouldn't do that for me. It's almost like I believe it for everybody else, but not for me. Let me remind you again this morning, folks. God can. And he can for you. You know, we impose limits on him so much. We make him small to fit our box and our understanding. We make him weak. We box him up and we label him. We heard that last week, that people label us, and we do the same to God in a feeble attempt to understand and explain him, to put a label on him. The words of a song from the old days, I used to say this: I've made you, God, too small in my eyes. Oh, God, forgive me. Folks, when we get a bigger understanding of God, our understanding of what he might just do today through you and me starts to rise. Our prayers change, our hopes change, our relationship with other people changes. Our offers to pray for people become far more offered and hoped for and prayed about. We start to see answers and miracles everywhere we go. Why? Because we've started to realize that God is bigger than us. And even though we think sometimes he wouldn't, God says, I can. You can. Don't put me in your box. God simply is. He's dynamic, he's creative, he's constantly acting, creating new possibilities all the time and plans in response to our choices. Folks, no I can't even say it. No theologian can totally explain him. No human being can contain him. But 52 sermons a year, plus Bible studies on a Thursday night with Simon, just not this Thursday, will not completely reveal him to you. He's God. And yet he's desperately in love with you. Wow. Do you get that? Let it just soak in for a little second. Do you know him? Do you realize that he loves you? Really loves you? Paul, in Acts 17, speaks about idolatry, all the gods that have infiltrated society from the Romans and all the latest ideas about what God could look like. And he says this: God who made the world and everything in it, the Lord of heaven and earth, doesn't live in your temples. He can't be boxed to something that has been built by human hands. He's not served by human hands as if he needed anything. It is he who gives us life, him who gives us breath and everything else. Folks, most of our children, if you're a parent, most children, or an auntie or whatever, but most children at some point or another will ask us a really hard question. Who made me, Dad? And you at that point have two options. Both of them are going to get you into trouble. The first option is this. Some parents might say, well, Mommy and Daddy made you. And then you've got the whole bees and birds and everything else conversation that follows on, haven't you? And that's with 17-year-olds. No, it's not. But then the other answer that some of us might go down and the route we might take is, well, God made you. It avoids one issue, creates another, doesn't it? Because the next question often comes, and it's this: well, who made God then, Dad? And to the mind of the child, the answer to the question is just as unsatisfying and confusing, because no one made God, son. He just is. That's not helpful, is it? I don't care whether you're 4 or 104. It's not helpful. Moses goes to speak with Pharaoh in Egypt, and God tells him to go and talk to Pharaoh. You know the story. He says, "Let my people go. Go and tell Pharaoh to let my people go." And so in this conversation, Moses turns to God and he says, look, well, when Pharaoh asks me who sent me, who am I going to tell him? What am I going to say? What's your name? And God says, I am who I am. That's no help, is it? It sounds more like a pet food or something you feed your cat. One of the things that you and I have in common with God is that we're all existing. We exist. But the difference is that you and I exist because of him. He created us. And he allows us to keep on breathing and keep on going. He allows you and me to exist. No one created God. No one gave him the gift of existence. If they did, then they're God. Work that out. How awesome, though, is that? God just is. It's not helpful to us in our minds. We want to know the whys of everything. We need it, all the I's and T's. There's some things we just have to take by faith and trust. I take by faith that the scientists are right, that there is atoms in this room, that there is air to breathe in this room. I can't see it. I just have to believe that because I don't get it. I'm not scientific in that respect. Folks, believe you me, this all-powerful God Creator God does not need Helen Robertson to exist. Helen Robertson needs God to exist. I love the verse in Jeremiah 32. Jeremiah knows what God's about, but he suddenly takes his eyes off God. We all do it. And he puts his eyes on the problem. And God turns around and he reminds him, and he says to Jeremiah, he says, I am the Lord your God, the God of all flesh. Is anything too hard for me? Somebody needs to hear that today. God can. He really can. And even for you. Is anything too hard for him? Or is it just your problem that's too hard for him? Same power that created the universe caused armies to tremble and nations to fall. That same power that caused Mary to conceive of the Spirit, that raised Lazarus from the dead. That same power that created the universe and holds it all in incredible place, that raised Jesus, is also active in our lives this morning, folks, as I speak. Paul prayed that the Ephesian church would come to know the immeasurable greatness of God's power. And I pray that for your life and mine this morning. Why? Because it will change the way we do tomorrow. It will change our approach to people who are poorly, sick, struggling. It will change everything. It will change our responses to every moment of the day when we realize just how big God is. God is omnipotent. That doesn't mean he smells, or he smells everywhere and everything. As I once read it, it actually is omnipotent. It has nothing to do with smell. It simply means that God is not only everywhere, not only all-knowing, he's also all-powerful. If someone was better than God or bigger than God or more powerful than God, he wouldn't be God anymore. Look at any government, not just North Korea or Russia. Look at our own government. And you will see just how easy it is to be tempted to misuse power and abuse people. There are one or two things that God can't do. One of those things is to lie. So easy, isn't it, to abuse people? Yet God has chosen to chain his power to his goodness and his grace and his love. He won't abuse you. He won't lie to you. He does not use his power to dominate you or crush you. He doesn't use it selfishly, but he chooses it always and only to use it for our own good and his kingdom purpose, to benefit our relationship with him. So God is omnipresent. He's everywhere. He's omniscient. He's all-knowing. He knows. He knows what you're thinking. He knows what you said yesterday. He knows what you're going to do tomorrow. He's all-powerful. He's omnipotent. And his spirit. Imagine not being able to get fat, sick, or grow old. How great would that be? Imagine not needing a bus pass or a car to get you there. How fab would that be? Especially with the diesel going up. Psalm 139 says this. David's working this out, and he's thinking, man alive, where can I go? Where can I hide from God? I can't go anywhere, can I? You are incredible, God. Where can I go from flee from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you're there. You're everywhere. If I go into my bed, to the depths, or the darkest recess of a pothole, or a cave, you're there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. John 4, God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship him in the form of Hillsongs or the form of old hymns alone. No, must worship him in spirit and in truth. There was a speaker was trying to explain to a very skeptical audience what spirit was like. Not gin or whiskey, spirit, different kind of spirit. And he described whiskey. He described spirit. You wait now. He described spirit as having no height, no depth, no weight, no colour, no size, and no shape. And there's a man that stood up at the back and he shouted, "Well, that's got to be the most perfect definition of nothing I've ever heard." And it might feel that way to us as well. But God is most definitely not nothing. There are religions today who actively pursue a state of nothingness. Nirvana is their ultimate goal. Nothing. How boring is that? Every other religion is full of people trying hard to get to something they think is either nothing or a type of God they have to appease. God comes to you and says that you are not nothing. Have you ever tried relating to something that's nothing? I mean, people are hard enough to relate to sometimes, and they're not nothing. They're stood in front of you half the time. Try it. Just close your eyes for a minute and imagine nothing. Can you see nothing? There's nothing. I say there's nothing there. There is, isn't there? I close my eyes. I still see Teresa up the back by the door. And I've got images and I've got floaty bits flying around. And then I'm starting to think about nothing. And I'm starting to think, well, what is it? How do you think about nothing? It's not just nothing, is it? Something pops into your mind, something you start to focus on, and even nothing is something. Confused you will be. Why is that? Because here's the thing. We weren't designed that way. We weren't designed to think, experience, remember, do, or plan nothing. We are made in the image of God. We are not God, but we're like him. How mind-numbingly boring would nothing be? Church, how wonderful. God isn't just something, he's everything. And everything did something for you and for me. He limits himself. He becomes like us. He puts skin on. He takes the body made of matter. He becomes something, someone that you and I could relate to. Not just something in the ether, but someone that we can understand and follow and get. So you and I could trade a life without God for a life with God. So we could trade a life that would ultimately mean nothing for a life with God that will ultimately lead to something, someone. And people say God's boring. God is dead. Folks, you have a story that proves that God is not dead. Well, folks, we can go on all day. He's holy, he's upright, he's flawless, faultless, and he's failure-free. You know, sometimes the more I get to know someone, the more I'm inclined to want to change them. You know, they say that it's after you get married, you get to know the person that you married. Anyone else realize that? Don't put your hands up. Won't be married for long. Not so with God. Why change the perfect? There's no need. I need to tweak myself, not God. Malachi 3:6, for I, the Lord, do not change. And with this I'm going to finish. He is what is called immutable, unchanging over time, unchangeable. He doesn't need to change. Why change perfection? He's the same yesterday, today, and maybe forever. No, he is the same yesterday, today, and forever. That doesn't mean he's like a static lump of concrete like this down here. Folks, he doesn't just sit there. Your God is alive. He's active. He's still creating. He's still recreating. He's still saving people's lives. He's still responding to prayers of his people. He's still true. He's still constant. He's still consistent. He's still good. He's still faithful, still reliable 100%. He's still available for you 24/7. He's still committed to you and our universe and our world, as good or as bad as it's getting. He's still there. He's still here. He made something out of nothing. Try that sometime. Not even Blue Peter could work that one. And when he says he's going to do something, he does it. His nature doesn't waver. He's the one sure thing in our constantly shifting world and lives, the foundation of our existence, the bedrock on which we stand. Do you know him? Or have you just read the book? Do you know him? Would you pray with me? Thanks for listening so well, folks. Father, I pray that you would enlarge our understanding of you. You're an incredible, amazing God, and we will never get you totally. But what we are understanding is this, that you are a father who enjoys his children, who laughs, weeps, and does life with us. You're unique, you're personal, you're spiritual, you exist and you don't need us to. You're all powerful, all present, all knowing. You're holy, you love us, you created and sustain us, and you keep this world afloat, whether people acknowledge that or not. You are the God we love. You are the God we serve. And I pray, God, that in these coming days, we would know you more. We thank you that you can. Forgive us when we say and tell you you can't. Remind us afresh just how big you are and how intimately involved you want to be in our everyday lives. Help us to trust you. When we pray to you, when we call on you, Father, I pray that we would trust that you'll answer, that you'd raise our confidence levels in you as we get to know you, and as we remind ourselves just how powerful and able you really are.